Dude, I have no experience with anything engine-wise. I have no business doing this. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Fingers crossed, clear. A lot of action today. We're not quite ready to start it, but we're getting there. We're waiting on fuel. We just finished the electronic ignition, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm regurgitating and doing what other people have told me to do. So thank you everybody for your advice. But pop out the 4 spark plugs on the bottom, squirt some oil in, rotate it around to pre-lube the engine. What we can do while we're waiting for fuel is we're gonna motor the engine. So very little load on the starter with the spark plugs not in. Ignition off. But the point is to look at your G3X touch screen to see oil pressure, because that's what we're waiting to do, to lube up the oil system. After that, then we'll put the spark plugs in, torque them down, hook up the ignition system, and get ready to crank. All right, let's do this. Actually, we shouldn't see any there because it's all gonna go down here. Is there a pressure block? Let's see if it's a pressure block, which it is. So I'm not sure why it's not venting out the top of the tanks. Yeah, I'm hearing it vent. Take 2, we have fuel. That was an interesting dilemma. The goal of this is to get oil pressure. Once we have oil pressure, we can put the spark plugs back in, hook them up, and crank. For right now, the fuel cutoff valve is off. So master is on, chocks are in, right ignition circuit breaker pulled. I'll verify that the left ignition is off once this powers up. Okay. Left ignition, that came back on. Okay, so that's now off. Let's go engine monitor up. Hold the brakes. Idle cut off. Throttle shouldn't matter. I'll just go mid-range. Everything look clear, you guys? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Clear. Yeah. Sounds good. Oil pressure 1, 2. All right. Oil pressure 7, 8, 9. Okay. Just being conservative on that. Okay, ready? Clear. Woo. Okay, oil pressure 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right, it's up to 46, 48. Good. I'm gonna do one more crank with good oil pressure to lube everything. Make sure it's in the oil cooler itself. All right, here we go. Clear. All right, oil pressure got up to 54. That's all we were looking for. All right, let's go ahead and put in the spark plugs. Get this baby fired up. Spark plug, 20 foot-pounds. Use anti-seize. Limitations, I'm not gonna exceed 400 CHT. Anybody can call, knock it off, wave your hands. We're not gonna have comms, so just wave your hands and I'll pretty much cut it. Actually, wave your hands, that'll get my attention, and if you go cut it, I'll cut it multiple ways, right? I'm gonna go idle cut off, ignition off, fuel cut off valve to close. Fire extinguisher, I'm gonna move the Bonanza in, so I'm not gonna blast it with the amazing amount of thrust that the Bogey is gonna produce. All right, here we go. This is exciting. All right, we got that circuit breaker in. The header tank has a lot of pressure on it, so I'm expecting for it to kind of self-prime once we hit this. So let's go ahead and hit it. Not so much, but when I hit the boost pump. So let's get the electrical system on. Alternator field switch is gonna remain off until I got a good steady engine. Throttle idle for now, mixture full rich, and I want to prime the system. So we're gonna hit the boost pump and we're gonna look for oil, or excuse me, fuel pressure. So let's go ahead and look for that. All right, here we go, boost pump. Okay, Fuel PSI, still nothing. Gonna go off. Okay, so no fuel down there. I've got mixture rich. Maybe if I go throttle wide open, let's just open everything up. Here we go again, boost pump. There it goes, fuel pressure, nice.
We got a leak.
Where was it?
We got this line here.
Okay, okay, potential, I didn't tension that. Okay, well, we got, that's good news, we got pressure.
Yeah.
Bad news, we have a little bit of a leak. Where, so it was coming out of here?
Yep.
Okay, let's go ahead and tighten that up. Check all the other connections while we're at it. All right, got that tightened up. So fuel boost pump, it probably didn't get to the engine, so it's probably not flooded, but I'm at the point where I'm treating it like a normal start, cold start. Boost pump.
Yeah, we can hear it out here.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think it's in the engine.
Pretty close.
In the cylinders. Can tell I'm nervous. Okay, brake set. Let's turn on the nav and beacon to be legal. There we go. All right. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Fingers crossed. Clear. No RPM is what I said, but that wasn't enough to wipe the shit-eating grin off my mug. Unfortunately, my GoPro didn't record this of all clips. Other than the RPM indication and the untorqued fuel line, this was an incredibly rewarding success. All the sensors worked perfectly, including the CHTs, EGTs, fuel flow and pressure, manifold pressure, oil pressure, and temperature. Low fuel, even the mixture worked great. Alternate air, left-right ignition. I shut off the motor with idle cutoff, and then I ran it again, and then turned off the ignition as an alternate source to shut off the engine. I still have to test the fuel cutoff valve to ensure that that shuts off the engine too. But anyway, idle is a little too low, but that should be a pretty easy fix. I couldn't do a full throttle test since I didn't have RPM, which brings me back to the lack of RPM. All right, so I've been anxious about this since I wired the entire plane from scratch, since this is the most complicated connection of the whole build, requiring a pull-down resistor at the Garmin engine analyzer, the GEA24. But looking at my interconnect schematics again, I think I might have a fix. The only problem is that it will require some contortion to get at the light speed ignition connector on the cold side of the firewall. Anyway, this run was just shy of 5 minutes, and I did another quick startup to test the warm start, which didn't require a prime, just started right up on the first blade again. This blew me away since my Bonanza does not love warm or hot starts, though I'm getting much better at them now. So until my first flight in early January, I don't want to run this engine much more, other than to test the RPM fix, do a taxi test, and do a full power static RPM test to ensure I get enough power for the first flight. I'm looking for 2300 RPM at 0 airspeed, so I'm starting with 17.5 degrees pitch on the ground adjustable Whirlwind. I'll be doing the new task-based flight test program and beta testing the EAA's draft test cards to provide them feedback before they are released. Finally, my carbon helmet from Lift Aviation just shipped, so I'll be rocking that during the flight test, stall drag, and higher risk backcountry mission. Thanks to Lift Aviation for sponsoring this episode. All right, here's the too low idle. We did it. Thanks, guys. Post run inspection. It'll be more thorough when I turn the camera off, but nothing is glaring. It's nice to feel some heat on these bad boys. All right, we got the birds back in their nest, and before we debrief that, I want to show you something on the Bonanza. I just got it out of annual. It's kind of cool. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about lessons learned, things I would have done different, and also tour you around firewall forward because I put in a lot of work since the last video. So let me show you something kind of cool that my mechanic found. It's called a door steward, and I've never heard of it before. Put their little sticker right there. That's coming off. But let me show you. Holy smokes. Look at that. I didn't know there was an STC for something like that. So it's obviously just a simple gas strut, but that thing was rattling around. The mechanism that originally came with the Bonanza was just so worn out. As you can see, the interior is just shot. But that's one thing that is awesome. I plan on upgrading the interior as soon as I recover, both financially and family-wise, from the Backcountry Bogey build. So as I navigate my way around, so the engine startup. First off, I want to thank a couple people. Reuben for his expertise up in Canada on how to prep the engine, because dude, I have no experience with anything engine-wise. I have no business doing this. I mean, that's not true. I don't have any experience, but with some help and with some communication and knowledge and me learning, a guy like me can do this, and that's what I want to kind of pass along the message. That is key to life, is keeping friends close and your smartest friends even closer. Speaking of which, Terry stopped by just kind of randomly and was able to watch and help out. And of course, Garrett, Kitloom Avionics, he helped me wire firewall forward. So let's talk about firewall forward. These things kind of went on at the very end. They're easy, they're fine. They're not much to talk about, just the scat tube. The baffle, this just took a lot of time. It's going to eventually fold forward, and so there's some trimming that's going to be done. It's a little bit ugly right now, but that was straightforward, just kind of time consuming. And of course, like everything Rands, they give you exactly enough to be perfect, and if you're not perfect, you need to source more. That was fine, so my mechanic had some that I could use, because you're going to use them down here too, right? And I was conservative. I left everything a little bit long, so I think, you know, a little bit overly long. So again, more trimming will happen with that. But okay, so ignition system, pretty straightforward. The one thing that I will kind of expound upon on the ignition system, so it's dual Lightspeed 3 electronic ignition. And so there's two boxes. There's an A and a B phase, and each cylinder has two spark plugs. So it took a little bit of reading the manual, but there's also a little bit of trial and error involved, and Garrett was awesome. He knew exactly what he was doing. Turns out he's a professional. But you have essentially a 50% chance of getting it right or getting it wrong until you figure out which system is which, and you could potentially change coaxials to get them to swap around. And I don't want to get too much into it, but because it goes into the process in the manual. But suffice to say, you get everything hooked up, and then you remove all your leads from the coils, and you take out the bottom spark plug, which we'll talk to here in a second, of cylinder 1. You rotate the prop till you're right at about top dead center, and then with the ignition turned on, but ignition leads, or the high tension leads, disconnected, you just go like this till you see two sets arc together. The two, you know, these two guys would arc together a spark, and then these two guys would arc together a spark. And that's good. That's for cylinder 1. And then you rotate 180 degrees, and then you do the same thing, and you get the other two to spark for cylinders 3 and 4. If you don't know what I'm talking about, reach out to me, and I can answer in a very novice way and really just point you to the manual. Okay, the alternator, not too much to talk to, just a lot of torques to look up and get the tension right. We did it just kind of by feel, but then we also took a torque wrench here, held the prop, and turned the torque wrench to ensure we had at least, you know, I think it was 15 pounds of foot-pounds of torque before it slipped. A lot of work down here. The cold air induction system is pretty straightforward. This, of course, is aftermarket from Aerosport Products. Something I still have to do is, I think I might have mentioned it previously, but I have to oil the K&N air filter that's in there. It requires some K&N oil, so I got to take that out and oil it. But as you can see, the alternate air is all hooked up, working, good to go. I did prime the contacting side of the aluminum there to prevent corrosion. Okay, so well, Aircraft Specialty is awesome. Not sponsored, but I sure appreciate them. They produced 4 lines for me. Actually, they produced 5 because I got this line wrong the first time. I forgot to account when I was measuring where this line was going to go, how long I was going to get this line. I'll talk about what it is here in a second. I didn't account for the mixture control cable, and so they interfered pretty badly to the point where I just had to get a new fuel line produced, and that's $200. All right, so I went top of the line. It's the integrated fire sleeve, and but I'm just so happy. It's clocked. Let's see, it's a 45-degree fitting and then a 90-degree fitting over here at 6 o'clock. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to their website. They can walk you through what how to order fuel lines, because I had no idea. Okay, here's my red cube for fuel flow. It's just attached with a bracket to this existing angle bracket that anchors your rudder system behind the firewall. Let's talk about the exhaust system. So these are pretty straightforward. Just had to kind of lop some of these off and then to make them shorter, and then connect them with the hose so they're kind of vibration isolated and in there like swimwear. I believe this was this was like the only fuel line firewall forward that I actually used from the kit. They provided another one. So there's plenty of other guys that are doing this. Shout out, by the way, to, let's see, well, P2 Aero is awesome, but he's not doing this engine. But let's see, I'm trying not to use their real names. S21 Project, as well as SimDPK. Anyway, he's got an awesome build, and he's helped me so much. So let's take a look at the other side of the exhaust supports. So got cotter pins here securing this. I'm just kind of showing you, so if you're building, you can get your own look, or maybe another look at somebody else's engine. I did replace these oil cooler fittings to 45 degrees so that the Rand supplied oil lines fit a little bit better. And they're not cheap, and you definitely want to go with steel on those. Contacted Rams to verify that. They're, yeah, like I said, pretty expensive, just these fittings. So we got the oil temperature, it's buried somewhere. Oh, check out this line. This is a pretty red, even though this is buried here. Here's manifold pressure. So over here, we've got manifold pressure, fuel pressure, oil pressure, and I think I got that wrong. There's oil pressure, that's fuel pressure. If I had my glasses on, I could read fuel pressure, yep. And plumbing, I'm going to stop talking about plumbing right now. I guess I will say that there is a flow restricted T line right here. See that T coming off the the fuel pump that goes one to the fuel pressure sensor right here, and then the other end, and that's flow restricted, so that if you spring a leak, you're not gonna have an issue there. The only other fuel flow restrictor I have is not on the oil line. It's the manifold pressure line. It seemed to be working great. It's a flow restrictor that's at the bottom of that manifold right there. I believe I got it from Spruce, but Aircraft Specialty sells them as well. But so this T goes down to the red cube, and then out from the red cube to measure fuel flow to the throttle body. So this is the mixture right here, and then the throttle is right there. I need to adjust the throttle because the low end wants to kill the engine, and so I need to raise that up. So I need to figure out which way to turn what and fix that. And then the upper end, I wasn't able to do a full power run because, as you noticed, the RPM wasn't working. By the way, the interior is not in yet. It just looks a mess, but it's just because the interior is not in, and I have some wire cleaning to do, or kemping to do, if you will. Okay, so check out the header tank. This was interesting. So you saw that in the video previous. It wouldn't want to feed because there's nowhere for that air to go, so you got to burp it. So raise the tail up. It burps because what you're trying to do is let the air out these, back up the lines, and then they're vented at the top of the wing right there. So raise the tail up, it burps. I guess it's less of a problem with the trike configured aircraft. but that took care of that problem. Lickety split. Man, starting the engine was so easy. I can't believe it. Having a big bore Continental, I just expected a lot more of a fight, especially since this was the first time. But I think the electronic ignition really helps with starting. Freshly charged battery helps. You know, we pre-lubed everything. And again, thanks to the folks who talked to me through the process of how to do this, because I didn't want to ruin the cylinders with not having oil. I didn't want to ruin the starter by cranking. The only time we cranked on it really was to motor the engine with the spark plugs out on the bottom to get the oil pressure. Did I say oil? I'm losing it. To get the oil pressure up and lube all the parts and get into the oil filter and whatnot. Speaking of which, so I need to check the oil, check all the fittings, just look for any leaks. Looks pretty clean so far, so that is a huge success. We are off to Japan for the next 11 days. So unfortunately, first flight isn't going to be till early January, but very early January. I've got all of January off to test fly and get this thing done. All right, I hope you guys have happy holidays and a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We'll see you soon. Until next time, it's Steve, your Clear Direct.